Welcome to episode 3 of the Can You Geek podcast. My name is Steve and this is Errane.
What up, nerds?
Today we're going to be talking about geek culture and its growth and where it stands and hopefully where we hope to see it go.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about this topic, Steve. We discussed it a little bit before. It actually is kind of funny because I'm a 33-year-old guy in college right now, and this was an inspiration from my English class, and it's been a lot of fun to kind of break this down. To give some history on it, I guess to kind of start us off, I introduced you to a Wired interview that was done with Patton Oswalt, and it's called Wake Up Geek Culture, Time to Die. I think you'll be putting it in the show notes for reference, as well as an interview from Kevin Smith where he talks about how it's a good time to be a geek. Now, to give reference of timeline for everyone, Wake Up Geek Culture, Time to Die was actually written in 2010, and the interview with Kevin Smith they're both Wired, which is funny, but the interview with Kevin Smith is from Comic-Con 2012. And I'd just like to hear, honestly, Steve, before I kind of jump in there, I want to kind of see what you grabbed from it, because I've been writing a lot on these and I have a lot of opinions on it. I've loved both, and just kind of tearing them apart's been a lot of fun. So I'd like to see kind of a virgin approach from you.
Yeah. So you, like you said, you gave me these articles in the interview and said, you wanted to talk about it. I was really interested because that's what the show is about. Are you able to geek about something? And Patton Oswalt's article hits exactly what this show is about, but he's using it as a negative where we're using it as a positive. The reason I say that is he talks about how, as he grew up, so I'm 39 turning 40, so I'm not a spring chicken. I've been around watching the geek culture evolve and grow.
Getting over the hill, Steve. Oh, shit. You old man. You old motherfucker.
I know. I'm getting there. So I've seen the geek culture grow, evolve, change over time, and I see what he talks about, but at the same time, I see it as a positive instead of his negative. So I grew up, I wasn't the loner like he was, lost in my otaku world, as he calls it.
And do you kind of want to explain what otaku is, just to kind of...
Yes, no. So otaku is the Japanese word for little world, I believe is the way he even described it. And so what it is it's when you fall in love with a genre, so you start to geek about it, you fall into this little otaku, your own little world. And so he grew up lost in these little worlds of D&D and the original comic books. Like he read through Sin City when they first came out by Frank Miller, stuff like that. And he goes through in depth everything that he loved, but stuff that kept him separate. Me growing up, I had those interests, but I was very much, without a lack of a better phrase, a butterfly all through high school and growing up, where my height, I'm 6'1", in high school in the 90s, that was considered pretty tall. So every sports team wanted me. I was athletically inclined, so I played sports, but I wasn't the typical jock. So I was friends with the nerds, friends with the geeks. I did well in school because I inherently smart without tooting my own horn.
So humble, Steve.
I know. Well, I was a kid everybody hated, where I didn't have to study for a test. I just walked in and knew it, where other people would spend hours studying for a test. And as I've gotten older, I've started to embrace and love the geek side of me that I pushed away for so long because I didn't think people wanted to see that part of people. So the growth of the geek culture, to me, has allowed me to be who I am, which is now led to where we are with this podcast. So that's where I love what he wrote. It resonated completely, but I see it as a positive instead of the negative, which is exactly the way I see Kevin Smith in that interview reacting, where to him, he's like, I started off as a nobody. I mean, I came here with one thing and now I'm rubbing elbows with some of the biggest movie stars ever, and he's truly in love with where he is.
Man, I could read you my argumentative essay I wrote on this, and you're pretty much quoting me word for word in ways you can't understand, Steve. I think it's beautiful that you can take that approach, because you are a bit older than I am, and you did see, I mean, honestly, you even see generational gaps that I don't see just in those few years, just because of your age difference. And it's a lot like what, just even that little bit of time because of how much just the culture grew in our span and our, like, as a millennial. And I don't know, do you actually fall under millennial, or are you right at the edge of the other half? I don't know if you actually fall
Generation Y, I believe.
Okay, so you're right, but then I actually stand in as a millennial. I'm on the front end of where the millennials start, kind of, and I think it's interesting that just even us, we have kind of a different view. I won't hold it against you that you're Canadian, but for all those other things that you did, my childhood, I was a geek. I loved my comic books, but I used them as an escape. I was a son to a drug addict parents who had their own problems and their own issues, and they lived a party life. And the only friends I had were whatever people wanted to come party. It was their kids. And at school, I wasn't very popular. I wasn't like anything special, but it was my geek kind of love for certain things and the people who were interested in that stuff for me, those little bit of friends that were into that stuff with me. Like, I think, we geeked out on comic books. We geeked out on cool, like, movies and stuff that we like to watch. Or even when I got in like 7th and 8th grade, I seriously had a rapper name and did that with a buddy of mine, Dayton. And I kid you not, dude, we wrote lyrics and hip hop and we're terrible. We were awful.
I'm not going to say I didn't do it.
Right. It's hard to admit to yourself, but we geeked out on these little things. And it's funny what you say about Patton Oswalt, because in the industry, like, as a nerd, he is creme de la creme, just like Kevin Smith is, as far as highly respected individuals within the industry and within the geek culture, that subculture and where it belongs. And I think it's impressive that me and you both had the same reaction, where I love what he wrote. I think it's insane that, he goes in and he talks about what it was like to be a nerd as a kid and the evolution of that and what he's seen. But like you said, originally I saw his point. Like, he kind of, his rhetoric kind of grabbed me in, and it pulled me in because he speaks to me, right? And you can see it kind of how he filters other people out. And this is kind of something I wrote about, was he manages, if you notice, he name drops a lot. And I found it funny because the students around me are a lot younger, right? And they don't know what a lot of these, like, they don't know what Appetite for Destruction is. They don't understand that Guns N' Roses album, right? They don't know what it was like to read the Sandman series. Like, I've read that entire series. It's amazing. Neil Gaiman might come to mind for them as a writer, because, the Gods, I can't remember what it is, that show that's on right now that has to do with his writing.
Gods of America?
New Gods, or I'm going to butcher it.
American Gods.
The American Gods, thank you, because I don't read anything that doesn't have pictures. I'm kind of sad that way. And but the Monty Python, for instance, was a huge one. And so he drops these little names that people might understand. It kind of turned them away. Like, you hear these things, they turn them away. And then he starts talking about the ridiculous of what the internet did. So it's funny you mentioned the same thing. Like, we're doing a podcast right now. Me and you and I don't know. Either way, both of us have this amazing moment where we get to be content creators, which is something that Kevin Smith speaks to highly. He loves the fact that content creation can exist, whereas Patton Oswalt sees that it's kind of the destruction of individuality. It's the destruction of uniqueness within geek culture. And he kind of wants to cause the internet, obviously jokingly, because he's a comedian, but he wants to implode the internet to, like, start over, almost Mad Max style, where we're finding a couple of different references and starting the whole thing over.
Yeah, and it's just funny because he actually even said all of this will be done to the Mad Max theme music.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Because, and yet again, it's another pop culture reference that before Tom Hardy did the new, was in the new movie or whatever, a lot of people didn't even know what Mad Max was. I personally, that's not something, I know what it is. I know of it. I know the contents of what Mad Max is about, but I've never seen the original movies. I've only ever seen the Tom Hardy one.
The original one is hard to watch.
Thunderdome's the one to see, right?
And anyone after the original. So the original is his origin story. He's a bike cop in Australia out with his wife and kid, and a bike gang gets involved. And it's like just before the whole anarchy thing happens. And then, so that movie deals with the whole like pre-story, and then you get the actual story afterwards. And it's the actual story where it gets really good. The first movie is good. It's just hard to watch. There's parts of it that, yeah, they're difficult.
Fair enough. Now, so I want to pinpoint on that though, where he talks about the internet and how it's kind of ruined how it's ruined the geek subculture. Do you think that the internet, the age, our information age in its entirety, the fact that the world's become so small, that so many more people, corporations are getting in on it. Our first 2 episodes are about Disney taking over Fox and how much they own. And then our second episode's on Star Wars. So, we're talking about everything that's under the umbrella of Disney that they've made big. And a lot of people don't like it. There is a lot of pushback in big business getting involved with geek stuff. But on the other side of it, I feel like we wouldn't get these, like Infinity War wouldn't exist if it wasn't for big money getting involved in our culture. So how do you feel about how the internet has done specifically? What is your feel on the take of more and more people? Like, it's not just our thing anymore, right? Like, most people know and love Spider-Man, Captain America, the X-Men. How do you feel about that?
I actually feel it's good for the industry and the geek culture world because it does bring more eyes to it. It changes it, which I think is good. So yes, there's more eyes on it, but then there's more nicheness within the overarching world to really geek out about stuff. So because there's this new mass market world of big business getting involved, you get more universes spawned within the micro ones. So best example is Spider-Man. Into the Spider-Verse showed so many people the multitudes of just what happens in a Spider-Man world or universe that they didn't know about. People didn't know necessarily about Spider-Gwen. People didn't know that there was, Peter B. Parker. But these are all comic book characters that do exist, even in short runs, that because of this big, scary, big business world throwing money into these industries and our geekness, that now shows people that, hey, there is this other side of the geek world that's still there, but you can now geek out about how good Spider-Gwen is and go into the intricacies of her world instead of
who is a badass.
Yes, complete badass. Has been one of my favorite characters for a long time. You can get into those nuances now where, it's not, oh, look, I like Spider-Man, so people shun me. It's now, oh, you like Spider-Man? Great. But do you know about this side of Spider-Man? And then people can have issues with that, like different characters within Spider-Man, the way Venom's been portrayed in movies. Like, there's different things that you can geek out about that's not necessarily just, hey, I like Lord of the Rings. You can be like, I enjoyed Lord of the Rings, but I didn't enjoy The Hobbit, and then this is why. And then go into the nuances of The Hobbit or go into the nuances of The Lord of the Rings. So, yes, I do see his point that the internet has kind of ruined geekness in it's no longer this hidden darkness of the world. It's brought light on it, but there's still shadow that we can, as a geek, thrive in and live in and still have that joy of being alone in a world, but not being alone anymore.
I love the way you said that. I think it's great. I think that it's really important to justify exactly what you said, because there's more and more involvement. There's still more pieces you can unpack and do, and you get all these people who write their own little fan fictions, and they get to, observe creativity on that end and create their own little stories with these characters. And I think a great example we brought up in episode 1 about Guardians of the Galaxy, this little piece of the Marvel universe that I don't think a majority of the folks knew about. And now, more than just people like you and I who were geeks that didn't really pay attention to that comic, love these characters now. But like my wife, for instance, Groot's one of her favorite characters in the world, and she wasn't really all that nerdy when we got together. Star Wars is kind of her only thing. And now we go and see every comic book movie together. It's like our thing now. And she loves to see, certain characters on the big screen. And I think it's amazing that now we kind of have that connection beyond just my nerdiness of collecting comics and stuff. And I think that Kevin Smith says it best, because it is big when he talks about, the Comic-Con and what it used to be back in the day. And we'll get into how relevant this all still is now, but he talks about how Comic-Con was when it started, when it's just a nerdy Comic-Con or a comic book convention, just comic books and kind of gamers sort of, but it was like the mecca of comic books, nerds and stuff. And now he talks about how he's still somehow relevant in that universe, even with all the big movie stars and stuff coming in, and how it's more of just like a a multimedia extravaganza, accepting all the different arts, accepting all the different types of genres. And I kind of go into talking about how our cosplayers, and I know that you know people that get into these businesses of like cosplay, and we've got our mixer streamers and stuff. And I think that that's the big part when he talks about the different avenues where we used to watch television, you and I, when we were kids, right? When you were still turning a fucking knob. Right, you didn't have a goddamn remote for the TV. You remember that,
I did.
Right? You had to turn a fucking knob with a bunch of goddamn numbers on it in this big ass wooden, like, beautiful box with this TV screen on it, right?
As a kid, I was the remote. My dad would be like, "Go change the channel." You got to walk over there and change the channel.
And Kevin Smith brings up that beautiful point of it used to be just those big TV. Like there was a lot of barriers to entry, right? I'm using some economic terms. Whoop, whoop. So there was a lot of big barriers to entry, but due to technological advance in the internet specifically and the information age and what that's brought, there's now avenues into production of entertainment that aren't just through greedy fucking giant corporations. Because the internet, we've got YouTube and we've got, iTunes, podcasting, Spotify, SoundCloud. There's so many different avenues. And I love when Kevin Smith's talking about, I don't care about TV shows anymore. It doesn't matter about whether it's on TV anymore. It's about streaming that networks. And he talks about how he's so big on content creation, and he's so big on moving these people from, place to place, and how well he can do it on the internet.
No, totally agree. I think even in his example, he was talking about one of the shows him and his daughter watched together, and he asked her, well, where do you watch it? And I think she said Hulu.
Yep, you're right. I forget. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
And it's like, she didn't care if it was ABC or NBC or one of these big networks. It was, no, I watch it on Hulu. And it is hard as a geek to get by that point where, as things have changed and older generations have harder times than we should be as a geek. As a geek, we should be embracing all of this change. But the change has been that everything is so diverse now and spread out that you don't have to go to one spot to get all your content. Everything is everywhere. And that was Patton's thing. He's like, we need to put everything everywhere always. And then that'll break the internet and we can start over in geek culture. And to me, I find it the opposite, where yes, we need everything everywhere always. Decentralized, it's just available, but it'll help breed the creativity and uniqueness of the future. At least that's
I think. No, I love it. And I think that you're onto something with that. And unfortunately, after reading this article about 5 or 6 times, I started to get kind of an elitist attitude from Patton Oswalt in his writing. And I don't mean to call it out as that. And not like Patton Oswalt's going to hear this and say anything. But my point is like I got this sort of elitist attitude on it. It's sort of like when you're when I play D&D with friends and you have that one person who knows D&D in and out, and I don't play exactly to the character that I like to do voices. I like to have fun, and they get mad at me because I don't know everything about it, and they kind of puff their chest out like, the kind of the bully, the D&D bully, if you will, like sitting there like, oh, you don't know how to do that. And I was like, come on, man, I'm learning, like I'm having fun. Whereas you have your other friend that knows just as much, if not more than that person, but they're just trying to teach you because they want you in. Right. And I feel like that's the difference between what I get kind of from. Right. Yeah. Like I feel like Patton Oswalt's like that puffed out chest, like, oh, this is mine and I want it. And I get that he wants to spread that to his daughter. And I get that he's worried about creativity and individuality and where it comes is the process of being a true geek. But I also think that, you have Kevin Smith there who's just welcoming. He wants more content. I think that when you break it down, if you're interested in something, you're going to read information on it. You're just going to. And yes, the World Wide Web makes it readily available. You don't really sink into it. But if you truly love it, you do. You rewatch it or you reread it over and over again. Do you know how many times I've watched The Office? I think I'm like 10 or 12 times watching that in its entirety. And I love quoting it. I love talking about it. And I've got 2 other friends who watch it just as much as I do. And we love to geek out on The Office. And I break down episodes. We talk about episodes. We go through and we look at fan fiction information that's outside of the show just to see kind of what people think or their little theories. And so I think that where Patton Oswalt has credit and where credit's due, he knows what he's talking about. And I get that it's all kind of funny and he's kind of having fun with it in a way, but I think his background message is true to what he believes. And I think it's wrong because if I'm somebody who has never been into nerd culture or geek culture and I want in and I just go absorb all this content on the internet, and I might get some wrong information, I might get some right information, I am going to start kind of creating my own opinion, or maybe I just want to be a puppet to it. Maybe I'm just a person who just fucking enjoys it. Like maybe it's just entertainment for me that I love. Yeah. And so I think that you're spot on with I find it great that me and you got kind of the same message out of both what Kevin Smith and Oswalt were saying and what we grabbed from that. I mean, Kevin Smith's a little more transparent, like it's not hidden behind levels of rhetoric because, it's an interview, it's Kevin Smith on spot or whatever. And, Oswalt's really just kind of playing his comedian card as well as like, the different forms of rhetoric he uses. And I get his point at the end about his daughter and how he wants her to have that experience. And I respect that. I love that. But he can be a part of making that experience happen and kind of evolve with it. So
that's what I'm a father too. I've got 3 kids, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. Adorable.
They're so much. They are. So I've had this discussion with other parents. Children are the most annoying joy you'll ever have in your life. As weird as that sounds.
No, it's wonderful.
And I find joy in breeding the creativity and joy in their lives. And I can do that without having to be like, hey, you need to go hide in a corner to read this comic book that I loved. So before you moved and I came down to visit you, we went to the comic book shop and I bought the trade book of Infinity War or Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh, very cool.
That was my gift to my son to read, so he knew what was going on in the Marvel world and show him what a comic was. I don't think he finished it, but he used to read that to his little sister every night. They would read a couple pages together every night and look at the pictures. And I had to teach them how, you go from left to right, top to bottom. Like, you got to progress through the pictures. Sometimes the picture is going to be long and it'll throw off the flow, but you got to go back up and show them and teaching them about the comic world. And he became obsessed with comics for a little while after that. Like every book he brought home from the library was a graphic novel, and he would read them in a day and progress his reading. And these are things that me as a geek dad can give my child that isn't lost because big business is on the little geek world that I grew up liking but having to hide away. It now shows that it's okay to be involved in that. And if my son decides he wants to go be an artist, it's not something he has to hide. It's something he can love and we can breed and enjoy and just push. And that's where my thoughts on the geek culture come in, and where it's a good thing it's gotten to the size it is.
Yeah, I think that's great. Just because I'm not a parent, I love to hear that aspect of it, because in Oswalt's case, right, and even in Kevin Smith's case, they are parents, and I can't relate to that part, right? But you can, right? You can talk about what it's like to give your kid that opportunity to kind of, because I'm sure as a parent, as a geeky guy, right, you want your kids all to love geeky things, but it's hard. You can't force that on them, but you can definitely introduce it, and you got to provide that magic.
Exactly. And so he sees my joy in watching the Star Wars movies, in watching the Marvel movies, and the amount of times I still watch them and continue to watch them. When he started to show an interest in Star Wars, we watched all the movies in chronological order, as bad as they were. We started at episode 1 and progressed through up until the latest movie, and he fell in love. And it's something I was able to do because of how big they've gotten. If George Lucas didn't decide to make a Star Wars movies in 1979, I think was the first one, episode 4. I think it was 79 or 77. If he didn't do that,
it was 77.
It was 77.
77 was A New Hope. Yeah, I've got actually an original New Hope poster from a California theater. It's worth a good deal of money, and I love it very much.
I knew it was around the time I was born. I just wasn't sure if it was before or the same year. And if he didn't do that, then I couldn't show like that love and that joy of what they are to the new generation. And so, yeah, I get his point, Patton Oswalt's point. Again, I'll go back to it. Like, I understand the ability to hide away in a room and play Dungeons and Dragons with your friends and be totally immersed and lost and have that be your own little thing, just the group of you. Like, if you grew up in a small town, you may have been the only 5 or 6 people that played Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
I get that. Totally understand that you've lost that uniqueness. But there's still the ability to show that joy that you had to a new generation. Yeah, now you have people playing Dungeons and Dragons on streams.
So, yeah, but with professional voice actors, which is fucking awesome.
It's incredible to watch. The Big Bang Theory 2 episodes ago or 3 episodes ago had a celebrity version of Dungeons and Dragons. Like,
no shit.
Oh, it was amazing. Like, it was.
Oh, I need to watch that episode.
Kevin Smith. So it was hosted by Will Wheaton.
Oh my god.
The group of people playing was William Shatner, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kevin Smith. I can't remember who else, but there was like 4 or 5 like really big people, and some of them you get together, like you understand being together. Kevin Smith, you can see there, Will Wheaton, William Shatner, all of those you get, but then Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is so left field that again, it's showing how big geek culture is, but at the same time, how encompassing it is to embrace that.
Well, Jess was underway on deployment. Man, she's sitting out there on the aircraft carrier and they're bored, and there's a bunch of guys that got her to play D&D with them, and she comes home to me knowing how to play D&D, and I'm like, what? That is fucking awesome. Like, and I understand the situation was because, they're bored out of their mind or whatever, but it opened up an opportunity to show her, and now she'd be interested in playing if we ever got a group together. And like you said, think about if you're the only person into Dungeons and Dragons in your community. Well, now you can get, I think it's on Roll20, which is like an online website, and there's some other ones. I'm not like sponsored by Roll20 or anything. It's just the first one that comes to mind. But you've got websites where you can use that as an outlet to find friends to play with. It's just as important as where online gaming is coming to play versus when you just sit on your NES and play by yourself. You probably an Atari because you're an old fucker. But I played.
My first one was in television. Okay, in television was the first one. I'm not old enough to have an Atari.
But you're so old.
my grandmother, though, on my dad's side, when I used to, after my parents separated and we go up to visit my dad, they had an original Pong home entertainment center.
Get the fuck out. Do you still have it, or do they still have it?
They sold it. When I found out that after my grandma had passed, we're talking, I think it was 10 years ago now. I want to say 10 years ago. And after she had passed and they were clearing out the stuff, my dad had messaged me and said, "Is there anything you want?" And the very first thing out of my mind was, and out of my mouth on the phone was, "Give me Pong. I don't care if you think it doesn't work. Give me Pong." And they were like, "Oh no, we threw that away." And I'm like, "How could you? Do you not understand what that is?" But it was gone. It's twice now that something like that has happened, where something super collectible was sold or given away by a family member. I had a Gen 1 all-metal Optimus Prime, including trailer, and my mom sold it at a garage sale for $5.
Oh my god. You're old. Oh my god. Optimus Prime gone. The Pong gone. Dude, you have the worst luck with collectibles. I would lose my shit, especially now. That would still haunt my dreams to this day.
Well, I guilted my mom so bad about it. I went online, grabbed my phone, went online, went to eBay and said, Gen 1 Optimus Prime. I said, "Mom, look, that's a $300 toy."
Holy shit. That's terrible.
She was like, wow. She's like, "I should have known something when the dad wouldn't let his son touch it."
Oh, God, really? Jesus, yeah, that's an indicator. Like, this isn't for you, boy. This is for your father's memories of childhood.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But it's things, there's a lot of things I grew up with that I would have loved to have kept. Like my original G.I. Joes. There was comic books, obviously, that I had that I would have loved to have kept and in better condition. Because as a kid, you don't think about storing these things, which is, again, part of the whole geek culture, and it not being hidden away. That is good, because now you have people that understand. Like, I can teach my son that, yes, it's great to read this, but take care of it so that you can pass it on to your kid, because it might be worth something in years, or you can sell it in years.
Yeah, that's so every Christmas we'd go to my grandfather and Mammal's house, and my grandfather's big thing, he geeked out on train sets. So like really intricate, sweet like train setups, and we had one that went around the Christmas tree. He had a bigger setup upstairs, but we had one that went around the Christmas tree. And the other thing we got to do was open up C-3PO's head and Darth Vader's head to all the original Star Wars figures that my uncle had, including an original AT-AT that we got to play with, snow speeders, everything, anything you could think of. We could pretty much redo the entire battle on Hoth with his toy. It was insane, and that was amazing. Incredible. And he moved away, and my grandmother put them in storage, and they all got stolen. So he had there was a rare recalled Yoda because of the jacket material, and he had that still in its packaging. I'm pretty sure he had the mail-in Boba Fett with the rocket launcher. He had a lot of cool stuff that was all jacked, so it's a bummer. But yeah, you're right. We geek out on that. Like, we think about it, and that's a part of the culture, and I don't think any of that's gone. I think because we have the internet and things are a little, the prices and stuff change. I think we're in a position where business kind of goes up for people who want to do business and geek stuff, and I think that people have opportunities to make money in geek culture now that they wouldn't have before, because the industries have gotten involved. People notice, and more people want that sort of thing. Comic-Con's become this amazing venture to be to, and kind of a mecca for everybody, not just comic book geeks anymore, as well as many other Comic-Cons and PAXs or expos and things that exist, and where people get to dress up and have fun and express themselves in different ways. And I think overall that Patton Oswalt doesn't have it right. I think that he makes some good points, and I think that Kevin Smith has the spirit and the attitude that I can get behind, with just expressing the beautiful thing that comes with content creators growing and the geek culture growing. And even though big business, yes, is making millions of dollars off of us, that we as geeks get to have a lot more fun with, spreading that around, and it's a lot more available and accessible for us.
Exactly. And yeah, it is really funny that you brought this topic up, told me what to read. I found the articles myself, read them, watched the interview myself. And we never talked about this before even sitting down to record, and the fact that we both came out with a very similar standpoint on Patton Oswalt's article, and the backing of Kevin Smith, and just the joy of seeing what people can do and create, is actually quite funny. And I think it's very interesting, because we have very differing opinions on a lot of things, but it's just funny that this is one thing that we both agree on.
We're just straight to it, man. That we straight up have the same result from what we get from these, and I find that fun, and it's probably a reason that we're friends, and that we love the things we love and the things we geek out on. And we don't geek out on all the same stuff, but definitely these. I'm glad that you had the desires that I did in talking about it, and I think that it's important, and I think it's important to our podcast to discuss like the culture overall, not just what's going on in DC, Marvel. I would love to talk to you about the new Joker trailer, but we can get to that later. I'm very excited. I think Joaquin Phoenix is going to do a great job. Anyway, that's nor here nor there. I love geek culture. I think that the subculture is becoming a lot more engulfed by the common culture of the world, and I think that it's a good thing. I think that there's always going to be negatives with the mass quantity of people involved, because that's just anything that gets popular. You're going to get your negatives. That's where it's at. Not that they didn't exist before, but yes, they're just going to be more of a stain because they're going to be bigger. But I think the gains outweigh the losses overall.
Oh, completely agree. So I think this was a good discussion and a good episode, and we
I enjoyed it, Steve,
within our normal time frame, which is shocking, because both of us thought we were going to go way over today. So for those,
I think we could have gotten out of hand.
Yeah, for those listening, we were worried we were going to be pushing longer than episode 1, and episode 1 was a complete length busting recording session that we did not plan for.
Yeah, that was an accident. We are sorry.
Welcome to our normal time frame.
Welcome to geek culture, baby.
And there's going to be long episodes in the future. There's going to be changes coming to the podcast, audio improvements. We're a work in progress, as everything is in the geek culture. So,
yeah, unfortunately, as a nerd, I am stuck in the boonies of Indiana with some shit internet. So Steve here is trying his best to deal with me, and we're going to see if we can't get some improvements. We just appreciate everybody who's listening. We appreciate everything that you guys give us for support, and we hope to bring some really cool segments like Steve was saying, and we will have some lengthier celebration episodes of some different things that we will test the waters on, see if you enjoy or not. We just love having you, and hope you continue to love the content that we're putting out.
Definitely, and we'll talk to you guys in a week.
Take it easy, nerds.
Today's music is used by permission from the artist Broke for Free. The song is called Something Elated. You can find it on freemusicarchive.org under the user Broke for Free.